Hey everybody, this is Jim Nate from Jim Nate Woodworks. Today I'm going to do a quick video about not woodworking but CNC working with brass. My daughter wanted to have a dog tag made out of kind of a heavy gauge brass, so I thought while I was at it I would do a little video on how this works with a diamond drag tip engraver. So I thought this was a great excuse to buy another tool and do another video. So show you how it worked out and some of the tips I used to make this turn out nicely. Alright, this is the drag tip that I bought. It's this particular one's a 1/2 inch shank. It's from WidgetWorks. I looked around, they seem to get pretty good ratings from everybody. This is, like I said, this is a 1/2 inch shank, but the spring-loaded tip is a 1/4 inch, and it comes with a couple of screws in the kit. You get a wrench and a strong and a lighter spring, so you can use different forces on what you're engraving. And I haven't tried it yet. They say that you can use these on granite and glass, pretty much any kind of smooth surface. You're not supposed to use them on something really hard. It has a lot of cracks and holes and stuff because it can chip the diamond off, but as long as it's relatively smooth, you know, it's a diamond tip, so you probably can't see it. I really can't, but you know, it's not supposed to wear out for a long time because it's so hard. The whole tool, the kit, is kind of expensive. I think it's somewhere around $200 or something, but the tips aren't too bad. A replacement end on here is only about $25, so if it lasts, you know, a decent amount of time, it's actually a pretty good deal. This is a 120-degree tip. They come in, I think, 60, 90, and 120. According to the directions, the 90, the sharper angled ones are more for like if you're trying to engrave through a coating, like trying to cut through like a clear, like if you had a brass plate with, say, a clear paint coat or something that you wanted to scratch through and engrave into. Otherwise, it seems like for the metals and stuff, if it's just right on the metal, they recommend the 120-degree tip. That's what I have, and I'll show you. It works really well. So I just started with a fairly heavy gauge brass here. This is 1/16 of an inch or 64 thousandths thick. I put it down on a spoil board. Just used carpet tape, double-sided tape. Works pretty well. Holds it flat, and then I did the engraving first, and then used an 1/8 inch spiral carbide bit to cut out the brass. Brass cuts pretty well. Machine's nice on a CNC router. A tiny bit of chatter on the edge. You can see it's not the best edge finish. Again, it's an 1/8 inch spiral, you know, 2-flute bit, so it's kind of a wobbly bit, and I was pushing it pretty hard. You'd probably get a much smoother finish with a 1/4 inch end mill. It'd probably be more appropriate, but I needed, for the other project I needed an 1/8 inch bit, so I just kept this one and used it. So this was the project I just did my logo. This is a kind of a hatch finish, not a cross hatch. The tip is about 5 thousandths of an inch wider. That's about the kerf of the scribe line. So I did a 10,000 step over on this one, and that seems to be about right. You get a nice fill pattern, but the lines aren't too obvious, and they look nice in the different light. One thing to point out is be careful when you take these out. You can see right up here, there's a scratch right there. You can see it. I got a little impatient. I was taking this out of here with a putty knife and slipped and scratched the surface. So brass is pretty soft, so you know, be careful. The nice thing with this, if this particular piece of brass I have has a really nice brushed finish on it, but if you get a shiny finish or something that doesn't look quite so good, these scratch pads, they're like they're sanding pads. They seem like plastic, but they've got a little grit in them. These work great for putting a brush finish on both aluminum and brass. The key is to brush in one direction. Don't swirl it around or anything. It looks gross if you don't have the lines perfectly parallel. But
If you just simply put this in a block, like a sanding block like this, and go back and forth, just make sure you do it in one straight direction, and it looks great. And if you get some scratch marks in there, what you can actually do is hit it with 220 sandpaper, maybe 400 first, and sand out these marks, and then come back and buff it up with these sanding pads, and you'll get a really nice finish, and you can take the scratches out. And it also takes some of the burrs off the edge from cutting. The scribe itself, or the diamond tip, doesn't really leave. I mean, it's you can feel it, but it doesn't feel like a burr, so you don't really need to sand that down or anything. So I'll show you some cutting in some time lapses coming up here. You can just kind of see how it works. So you can kind of see it. It took a while. I ran about 30 inches per minute on the scribing or drag on the drag tip itself. I did 100,000ths of an inch compression with the strong spring. That seemed to give a very good amount of. It wasn't too deep of a cut, but it was very distinct. So that was about right with the strong spring. It worked well both. I tried aluminum as well. It left a nice scribe in that. And then with the 1/8" upcut spiral carbide bit. I was cutting at 30 inches per minute and 10,000 RPM. That works really well. Like I said before, it did chatter just a little bit. It's you know, not a perfectly smooth finish around the edge. And I think a 1/4 inch end mill would probably leave a nicer finish for that. So that's something I might try in the future, but I didn't have to use any coolant or mist spray or anything for this. It cut pretty well dry. It leaves really crisp lines. I did a hatch fill, so it went across and filled in, and then it comes back and goes along the edges, and when it does that, then it really leaves a nice crisp line. And you can do very small fonts with this. I did some phone numbers on the dog tag that were probably 200 thousandths or less tall, and they were very visible. So you can do some very fine detailed work with this.